Muppets Haunted Mansion has finally materialised on Disney+, but how does the Halloween special fare against other Muppet productions of recent times? And does it help nudge the franchise in the right direction? Stay tuned for my thoughts. This special marks the first dedicated Halloween Muppets production, and it certainly creates a spooky and unique atmosphere of its own. The two main characters, Gonzo and Pepe, carry the special with ease, thanks to the strong performances of Dave Goelz and Bill Beretta respectively. Their firmly established character traits from prior Muppet productions help to provide the audience with a sense of familiarity, whilst we also see a natural evolution of both characters throughout the duration of the special. The premise is that Gonzo is invited to the Haunted Mansion, based on the Disney theme park ride, to stay the night as a challenge to prove his fearlessness, and Pepe tags along. Each room in the mansion holds someone's greatest fear, which reminds me heavily of the Doctor Who episode The God Complex, which is basically the same premise. As for characters, you've got Pepe being very erratic and interested in the women's, okay? Whilst Gonzo plays the straight man, which he's kind of lent into more since the likes of Christmas Carol, though this special does of course reflect on his more unhinged past. As for Matt Vogel's Kermit in his first big-ish role, I do want to say that when filtered through a phone, he sounds more like Jim Henson, early on in The Muppet Show, but I don't think that's saying much. There were genuinely parts where I thought, okay, that's more like Kermit, but then the voice would go flat. One particular line literally just sounds like Vogel's normal speaking voice.
You don't have to be the great Gonzo to be great Gonzo.
I think the issue is, Kermit's original voice wasn't that far from Jim Henson's natural speaking voice, so it's hard to make him sound right without overdoing it like those daft YouTube parodies. Steve Whitmire had a higher voice that we're all used to, so audiences are finding the new one especially jarring due to Vogel's voice being so much deeper. Regardless, Kermit's kind of off to the side in this story, so it hardly brings down the rest of the experience, though it is sad to see this once iconic character just kind of being there. One other thing that I picked up on was that Piggy acts really childish here, which just seemed a bit off. Like there wasn't any of that gruffness to her, she was just all cutesy, and yeah, I thought I'd point that out. I did love seeing the Swedish chef pursue this pumpkin with a chainsaw while it's screaming its lungs out. Completely ridiculous with slightly dark implications, as the Muppets should be. Both Darren Criss and Will Arnett were probably the strongest celebrity cameos in terms of character, who play the caretaker and the ghost host respectively. Arnett's probably the highest profile celebrity in this, but luckily he's got the beefiest part too. I know he played Lego Batman across a few movies, but what I wasn't expecting was for him to sound exactly the same here.
I shall be your host this evening. Your ghost host.
His costume is based off the ghost host in the Haunted Mansion ride, but ironically I can't help but think of the Joker with the additional purple. I've got to mention this skeleton and stereotypical British ghost, which appear and make this same joke about 10 times, and it wasn't funny the first time, nor the second, or the third, you get the idea. But just because kids are watching doesn't mean you have to dumb down the jokes to such an extent. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are plenty others in the special that even if they're not hilarious, you can appreciate the thought behind them and get them to some extent, you know what I mean? I find moments of good comic timing are far more effective. For example, after the screaming goat appears, it kind of moves as if it's going to speak or something, and then suddenly screams again, which catches you off guard, and you know, that's good stuff. Life Hereafter is the first original song to be sang by the new Kermit as well. His singing voice is definitely better than his talking one. Maybe that's how he auditioned and got the role.
Welcome to the life hereafter, sleepless nights, eternal laughter.
But it's not only him, as is joined by every other Muppet in the mansion, and there's a whole load of them, including some unexpected cameos which I'm going to address in another video. Overall, nice catchy tune, though they end it on a sour note with that same joke, again. which still ain't funny. In fact, even the jokes Fozzie tells, which are intended to be bad puns, are more entertaining. I just want to add that there's some really impressive cinematography throughout. You know, when you consider the limitations of working with puppets, not to mention focusing on such a small one like Pepe, it's very impressive that some shots end up as nice as they do. Or at least would do without the overuse of bad VFX every so often. But that's something else I'm saving for another video. I do love where the special culminates to this scene of Gonzo finally facing his fears. The old Gonzo is really cool and almost leans into the realistic creatures category of Jim Henson creations. There's some white hair coming out of actual Gonzo at this point too, which you may have missed. The even older version with the shriveled nose is pretty traumatizing, along with skeleton hands. This also reminds me of the "You've aged, spirit" scene from A Christmas Carol, where the spirit ages in a matter of seconds. It's at this point where the special starts to actually have some weight to it and felt more like a movie, with Gonzo realizing that he's afraid of losing his friends forever. Seeing him trapped behind a glass mirror and unable to communicate with his friends is a pretty deep but wholesome moment. Kinda get vibes of Christmas Carol once again, you know, when Scrooge sees his family through the window, but he can't interact with them because he's in a flashback. And one frighteningly bad CGI monster later, Gonzo saves Pepe from marrying the bride, who's basically the main villain. Once again, a nice bit of character development for Gonzo, and we get some great appearances from the likes of Walter, Johnny Fiamma and Salmonella, whom the bride has brutally murdered. If anything, her motivations are a bit unclear because she marries them, murders them, and assumedly traps them in a painting a la King Boo from Luigi's Mansion, so they're trapped forever, but then they just kinda come out of the paintings as they please and irritate her for all eternity. After jumping through the window and escaping the mansion, they meet back with the caretaker who's prepared them graves, which was a funny moment. There's a few more details that I've left out, but if you've seen the special, you'll know what I'm referring to, and if you haven't, bro, what are you doing? We conclude with this great cover of Dancing in the Moonlight at the end, performed by Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem, and then you get outtakes from guest stars and loads more obscure Muppets alongside them. Overall, Muppets Haunted Mansion is something of a return to form for the Muppets. However, its one-off special status leaves the future of the franchise unclear, as it's not like a series or a film where we can expect another installment. Nonetheless, the special is a love letter to Muppets history through all of its references and Easter eggs, which I'll be covering soon. So it's a treat for veteran fans, whilst there's plenty to enjoy for new viewers too. The message at the heart of the story is great, despite some ropey VFX along the way.
You performed the greatest feat a soul could ever achieve. You faced your fear, and that is the greatest act of all.
But what did you think of Muppets Haunted Mansion? Did you love it or hate it? The general reaction seems to be quite positive. It's leagues better than Muppets Now, though that's not saying an awful lot. I'd personally say it's the best Muppet content we've had since 2015's The Muppets, which was 6 years ago now. But yeah, we'll have to see where the franchise is headed next. Leave your thoughts down below and don't forget to like and subscribe for more Muppets content. Thanks for watching.